Hi.
My name's J.C. McCauley.
I'm Naisha McCauley, and you're watching AccessTV.org.
All right, my friends, once again, it's time to get our talk on. It's Morning Talk with me, your host, J. Stan McCauley, and, of course, the champions of talk joining us this morning. We've got our champion, Alphonso McGriff III, in studio with us, along with a special guest also joining us in studio. We'll get to him in just a hot second. So welcome aboard. Hope your last night was a good night. A little feedback there. That's all right. Hope your last night was a good night here in the great city of Hartford, Connecticut. We continue our conversation of what's going on and what's happening, and giving voice to points of view and opinion. If you like what we do, share it with your friends and family. All right. So, Mr. McGriff, sir, happy birthday. How you doing?
Stan the man. I have no complaints as usual.
No complaints?
No complaints.
You never have any complaints.
I just be rocking and rolling with it the best way I know how.
Mm-hmm. All right. Ain't nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. All right. A lot of birthdays flying around here. We got a special guest in studio. He's not a stranger to the Hartford area, and has a very vocal individual, community. I hesitate to use the word activist because I don't know. Sometimes activist is not perceived the way it should be. But for lack of a better word, involved person in the community. That's what constituent. Mr. one and only Luis Delgado. How you doing, sir?
Good morning, Stan. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing real good. Pull that mic up to you a little bit. That's all. Yeah, just swing it towards you. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. How you doing?
Everything's good. You know, I'm just happy to be here. I'm semi-retired now, so I'm looking for things to do to get involved, to raise awareness and consciousness in the community, you know, about the things that pertain to us, and how we can do better. You know, all the work that I do is community-based oriented, which is a word that is almost extinct in the voices of the politicians from Hartford nowadays. There's a lot of individual stuff going on, and a lot of back-patting going on, but I don't see any serious things going on right now. And it's the political season. And I'm hoping that our wonderful families and constituents, you know, will make decisions that are based on the benefit of our community, our families, our children. You know, so I'm looking forward to seeing some new faces in there, because the ones that are there now were not up to par. And that's what I'm doing nowadays, Stan.
All right. So still fingers in the pie still.
Absolutely, brother. Yes.
All right. Yeah, I have to agree with you. It seems like on all levels that the elected officials are becoming less and less engaged in doing the people's business, and they seem to be doing more of the party's business, and the power brokers that control the party. They seem to become less our representatives and more someone else's.
I agree with you. one of the things that I often ask politicians when there's an issue on the table is, who are you representing? Are you representing the community, or are you representing the party? And, we have to draw the line, because a lot of times we've been sold on the idea that the Democrats are for black and brown people and the Republicans for the other side. But the truth of the matter is that neither side works for us. And we have to, develop our own political party that is going to deal with the issues that affect us head on. So right now, I don't see anyone out there like that. I mean, even in some of the other cities, like a city like New Britain, for example, they have a mayor that, a lot of times white people can't see their own racism and their privilege. So here's a white lady in a city that's about 90% people of color, and she refuses to remove a racist Columbus statue, even though the council asked her to. And this is the kind of stuff that we talk about when we talk about white privilege. Because when black and brown folk have a problem, it's not a problem for our community until white folks says it's a problem.
That's interesting. My view on the statues is an interesting one. But having said that, if the council, who represents the people, requests that it be removed, her capacity as mayor should be, how do I do it efficiently and quickly?
Yes,
I mean,
we have
she
the same thing in Hartford, Stan. We have the same kind of foolishness going on in Hartford. We have a police chief who was demoted for violence against his own officers. He certified officers in something that he wasn't certified in, and he wasn't certified to certify others. And nobody's asking that question. Nobody's looking into that. Did those officers have to be decertified and be recertified? And then he gets into a car accident. And see, the thing, when I talk, I always quote the great ones, the ancestors, Albizu Campos, Malcolm. We have a lot of great people, even here in Hartford, But it's the same thing. We're always looking for role models in the wrong people, right? Here's a police chief. He's supposed to be our role model for our children and our families, our citizens. He commits a crime, several crimes. The mayor bails him out. He's the judge, jury, and executioner. And they go on business as usual. And the politicians that are supposed to be representing our interests, they don't say nothing about it. Everybody's quiet. There's no questions. There's no press conference. There's nothing. So how can we trust people like that, Stan?
Well, it seems, the land of oppression. I mean, that sounds like the actions of the oppressed. That's what it sounds like. In terms of trusting them, I don't trust anyone in elected office. I don't think that we need to trust them. We need to see deliverables.
Yes.
I don't trust the mailman. I just expect my mail to be there.
Yes.
And if they put the mail in the wrong box, it's not an issue of mistrust or not. It's a matter of the job wasn't done correctly. We apologize. We bring in your mail. Now, it would be nice to trust politicians, but the way that politicians get elected breeds distrust.
Yes.
And so I think you have to earn, they have to earn our trust, and then they have to maintain our trust. But to me, politicians are employees.
Yes.
And I think we do ourselves a disservice when we extend to them a level of trust that is not
warranted.
There's nothing that warrants that level of trust ever.
I agree.
Because the nature of politics is that you have a singular individual representing multiple points of view. He cannot or she cannot please everybody at all times, ever. So they need to be, they really need to, in our system, in my opinion, they need to listen to the voices when you have disagreements or opposing points of view, bring folk together and come up with some sort of, consensus, and then make sure that that consensus happens. But that's not how they see us. They see us as a currency. I use a very, very crude analogy.
Yes.
This is a utility.
Yes. That's what they use.
Everybody can appreciate this,
yes.
because it's quietly this is kept. Everyone uses it. They use it for different things. But having said that, let there be a pandemic, and you'll find out how important this stuff is. Because it's something you need. But once you use it, you don't need it anymore. You don't look it up. You don't worry about it. You don't go find it. Tell thank you. Mm-hmm. It's just a utility. And that's what our vote is. They need it until they've used it, and after they've used it, they don't need it anymore.
They have to toss it out.
They toss it out, and come in next election, they go out and get more, and for the moment. So you're not their charity, you're not their cause, you're just a vote. Now, some people elected to office care. Some of them do care.
Yes.
Unfortunately, most get elected to office on their way to somewhere else. So they just need the voter to get in. Then when they get in, they do what either they want, what the party wants, what the biggest donor wants, and they serve the system. So, if you put your trust in them, you do yourself a grave disservice. That's not to mean that they can't be nice people or folk that you might even go out and eat dinner with or whatever the case is. But when they do their job, they're not friends.
Right. They're
not family. They got a job to do. And so
I think somewhere down the line, Stan, they flipped the script on us, because politicians are supposed to work for the community. There's a problem, an issue in the community, and they go out and find several different solutions that they recommend to the community. Then the community approves, and then they go on, move forward with the problem. But somewhere down the line, they tricked us, man, and they act like we work for them, and we have to do what they tell us. And we have to change that, and the only way that we can do it, according to how our system is set up, is through the vote or through protests. Because politicians can be protested out of office. You know what I'm saying? And if the people of Hartford decided that Luke Bronin is inadequate, he's inappropriate, whatever the case may be, we don't have to have a vote to get him out. We can just go to City Hall and demand that he leaves, and I'm sure that he'll leave. Look at what happened in Puerto Rico. The governor was forced to resign. Mm-hmm. We have the power here. We forced people out of office before. We forced Beth Narvaez to leave town. We forced other superintendents and other politicians, other police chiefs, So this one is particularly of interest to me because I'm a social scientist of sorts. I like to study stuff like that. And in the 5 major cities in Connecticut, they all have about 90% people of color, and they're all led by a white male. Mm. Okay? And that in itself is a problem, because I know that Stan McCauley can't go to wherever Luke Bronin is from and decide he's going to run for mayor tomorrow, and all the white people out there are going to run and elect him.
I would humbly suggest he can't go where he's from.
I agree, because they know
he's run for mayor.
He's a carpetbagger. They know he's a hoax. So like I said, hopefully we will. Our people are beginning to awaken more. We're creating more consciousness, and hopefully this election we'll see some things, and we'll have politicians in there that when we have a police chief or a fire chief or the city man, whoever, when they're committing acts of criminal acts, they will be held accountable. So that's what I'm looking forward to.
All right. Well, that's a heavy lift. Unfortunately, because Hartford is an interesting town. It's a city that's very poor.
Yes.
And the poverty is very well camouflaged.
Yes.
And when you dump $30 million into poor communities, on a regular basis, it works very effectively in keeping people quiet. And folk get on the old go along to get along bus line. They buckle into their seat, and if they are asked to get up out the front, move to the back, they surrender their seat quietly, and they just go on and behaving, and hopefully they'll do right by us.
There's a brother named Abdul Muhammad Sr. who passed away a couple years ago. He was a magnificent teacher, and he wrote a book called Words.
Mm-hmm.
And he said that the words that you used yesterday are who you are today.
Mm.
And the words that you use today are who you're going to be tomorrow. And the reason that I say that, Stan, is because in our culture, words matter more than in most cultures because we have an oral culture. So, it's important for black and brown people to understand what happened to us. And I'm saying this in relationship to how the politicians are using language that's tricking us. So when the invader comes to our land, right, the first thing he does is he takes our language. Because when he takes our language, he takes our history. And then when he forces his language upon us, we are forced to learn his history. And so now this is where people like you and I are at today, Stan. That's the level of colonization that we have. We're colonized, whether we like it or not. That's how it is. So people like me, what we look for is ways to bring back the healing, that spirituality that has been in our families forever. To me, we need a black or brown police chief. But not just because he's black or brown, but because he's qualified. And we never gave officers on the force that been there 15, 20, 25 years an interview to see if they qualify. And, going back to the community thing, Stan, I believe that the community should be picking the police chief because he's going to work with us. The community should be picking the fire chief. You know what I'm saying? Because they're going to work with us, and I don't think that Luke Bronin has listened to us at all, in terms of the things that we wanted. When Narvez was there, he defended her, and we forced her out. And we forced him to take Leslie. It was a political statement. Now that we have to do the same thing now, I need the community and politicians, to work together to force Luke Bronin to get rid of Jason Thody, who's a criminal. He's committed crimes, things that if a regular person like you and I did, we would be in jail. You couldn't have a car accident. And, I just was involved in a car accident. You think Luke Bronin can call for me and say, no, he's all said nothing. You know what I'm saying? No. So we got to stop that. That's white privilege, and we have to start talking about these things in public and holding people accountable. You know what I'm saying? We have an oral tradition. And we have to stick with that. We have to use our voice. Maya Angelou said, when you know better, you do better. And a lot of us know better, and we have to do better, because our children are suffering. I retired from New Britain, Stan, about, 5-6 months ago, whatever. I don't know. I'm still getting phone calls, texts from students, parents, and staff about the horrible things that are going on in New Britain. But you have politicians out there like Francisco Santiago, Bobby Sanchez, who's running for mayor, who's in cahoots with the superintendent. We don't have proper, appropriate, respectable representation in Hartford. What do we have? What happened to Doug McCrory? What happened to Jimmy Sanchez? All these other people, Minnie Gonzalez, Molly Rosado. What happened to them with these acts of crime that these folks are committing? Where are they? They're not holding them accountable, and a lot of us feel that they may even be in cahoots with these people. And I'm just making observations. I don't want to attack my own people, but come on, man. We got to do better. Our children are suffering. Our families are suffering. You just touched on this, Stan. Hartford is one of the poorest cities in the country. And it is being conveniently concealed. And when you talk about they just dumped $30 million. They're going to give them $6 million every year for, I guess, for 6 years, 5 years, right? But the community really doesn't see that money. The community-based organizations and other government agencies, by the time the community sees that money, there's nothing left.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's why they can keep bragging about dumping $30 million. They're dumping $30 million in their pockets.
So it's $30 million over a 6-year period.
Yes, 5 years.
5 years. $30 million over 5 years, and then Hartford Hospital's the partner, so they kind of like manage the money, or
and then they got all these salaries for employees and this and that, and you know the community doesn't see that money. And then the other thing that's horrible about it, brother, is that they don't have a say in it. The people that are affected, that are supposed to be receiving these funds, they don't have a say in how their money's going to be spent. And let me say this. This is funny. I was looking at the arts grants that they gave
mm-hmm.
in Hartford.
Mm-hmm.
I think they gave away like 15 grants or something.
I think it's, as I recall seeing the article, it's like $1 million. Was it
right?
$1 million?
But they gave it to so many people, and most of the recipients in our city were white people. What's that all about? You know what I'm saying? The free community center.
Mm-hmm.
I try to get in there once a week to have a chess club for the community.
Mm-hmm.
And they deny me. They say they can't do it. And so for me, these are white people creating spaces in our own community and denying us accessibility. I call Jimmy Sanchez. I call Molly. Nothing. If it's a community free center, then the community should have access to it. I don't understand this. So, and I know I'm jumping around a lot, Stan, but there's a lot of things that people need to hear. They need to know about.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? They need to know about that. Critical race theory is probably the most important subject in the country right now because it talks about the way that our children are being educated, the way that they're being told history. And right now we have a lot of racists in America that don't want to teach critical race theory. And it's simply the real history of America without the whitewashing. In Texas, they've written slavery out of the textbooks. And they have in the textbooks now that Africans came here voluntarily to work. Can you imagine how disgraceful and how disrespectful that is to our community and to our ancestors? And for people to accept that? So we have to be informed so we can make informed decisions about what our children are learning, who's teaching them, and the content. You know, and that's not happening. We need black and brown teachers and administrators to step forward and make demands. For example, in New Britain, again, they haven't rolled out the African American and Latino studies. That was supposed to be rolled out 3 years ago. But none of the teachers and none of the black and brown administrators have challenged that. And it's our right. We can ask for that. We don't have to be afraid. And so there's a lot of stuff that our community needs and politicians are not delivering. Why aren't politicians talking about that? This is something that's major. It's going to affect our children for the rest of their lives. It's going to affect us because the way that the story is being rolled out. So why aren't they talking about that? So these are really, really important issues. And racism is rampant in our schools. Rampant in our schools. And so I ask parents and strangers all the time, would you allow a convicted sex offender to teach your children? And you don't have to answer that. I know the answer to that is no. So why do we accept racists teaching our children when we know their agenda is simply to hurt us? You know, so because we accept it, but we don't have to accept that. So these are things that our politicians need to be talking about and our educators talking with the community about, not just amongst themselves, but with us, bringing forward ideas and stuff. They're not doing that. They're just busy making money, and some of them may even be corrupt. I don't want to accuse anybody of anything if I don't have proof, but some of them may even be corrupt.
Well, I don't know that they're necessarily corrupt in the sense that they are taking money, but the system is corrupt in that it's broken. And that I think is we could say that without fear of debate.
Well, people keep saying that, Stan, about the system being broken, but the fact is that, 30 years ago I said that this education system was made for white people. It wasn't made for us. So our children are not going to succeed. We didn't have any part in designing it. We didn't have any part in implementing it. So everything that our children know, everything that our parents and our grandparents know has been through the eyes of white people because we had nothing to do with it. And even now, when you have these black and traditional black and colleges and universities, you know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things that are going on there that shouldn't be going on. I mean, there's a lot of stuff we can talk about, Stan. And when you talk about being woke and being awake, it's just something as simple as, I used to be a Knicks fan. I used to be a Yankees fan. But the Yankees are an extremely racist organization. Major League Baseball is an extremely racist organization. So why would I, as a woke person, watch their games, buy their gear, go to the games and buy tickets? When I buy a Yankees hat, I'm contributing to racism. And that's what being awake is. And our people have to know that. It's just holding people accountable. That's all it is. That's what being woke is. Holding people accountable and doing the right thing. That's all it is. And we're not doing enough of that. We have to do that. Our children, our families. I'm a grandfather now. And I'm extremely concerned for the world that I'm leaving behind for my grandchildren, for my children. So I'm trying to do better by raising awareness and raising consciousness. We have to challenge. Robin DiAngelo wrote a book called White Fragility. And in her book, she said, we will not get where we need to get to with white comfortability. White people cannot be comfortable. So we can say that the system is broken. We can say all these things, but this system was not made for us. So it has to be rewritten from the beginning. Every law, every policy, every regulation has to be written, and people of color have to lead their narrative because we gave white folks a chance to do it and they messed it up, and they have to accept that is the right thing to do. We had an incident here in Hartford when Tim Sullivan was running against Leslie, and I met with him, and he asked me to support him. And then he said, I know I have white privilege and blah, blah, blah. And I said, and that's exactly the reason, brother, why I won't support you. Because if the playing field was level and Leslie had a fair chance at you, I would support you because I think you're a good administrator, right? But it's a political statement. And so for that reason, brother, you should step down. And then I did a Facebook video and said something similar, asking him to step down, and he did. And that's the kind of people we need. You know what I'm saying? He might have been a better superintendent. I don't know. But I support Leslie. Her job is not easy. And I look at her like I look at Obama, right? I think Obama could have did a lot better if he had, the white people behind him, the Republicans. And I think that in Leslie's case, I think she could do better if black and brown people stop looking at her through white eyes and look at her through our own eyes and see that there's a sister up there that's struggling, that's battling for us, and she's right in the lion's den. She's in the lion's mouth right now. So, we have to protect our own. When they're doing a good job, we have to protect them.
Well, let's focus on something.
Yes, brother, I'm all over the place, man. But there's so many issues that affect our community. But I'm ready for whatever you are, Stan.
That's true. But I mean, you brought up a lot of different things, and all of those things are most certainly worthy of a
discussion,
a deeper dive or discussion or whatever. But let's. I guess we could start with the superintendent. And I have no problem with Leslie. I don't mind talking about the superintendent, even though I do have a contract with the city of Hartford. That doesn't stop me from speaking. But so let's look at Leslie. She's the superintendent of Hartford Public Schools. All right, I think she makes a good touch point or example. You mentioned Senator McCauley. You mentioned Councilman Sanchez and Council President Molly Rosado. Put TJ in there and all the rest of them.
Yes, of course.
McGee and all the rest of these folks. So let's use her as the example of them. Because of all of the officials in charge, because she's not elected.
Yes.
She's appointed.
Yes.
But of all of the officials in charge, I would say that she has the most ability or capacity to impose her will on her subordinates.
I would agree with that with some conditions, Stan, because, this isn't the Wild Wild West. When one of your employees is not working out, you just can't pull up in their space and shoot them and get rid of them. Right?
You can't shoot them, but trust me when I tell you, you definitely can get rid of them.
Well, you can try, but now you have unions, you have lawyers, and the teachers union is like the police union. They protect. They claim to have a lot of good teachers, but all those good teachers will protect the bad ones. The story that's going around Connecticut now is saying that there's 2 cops, right? And one of them is charged with rape, and his partner arrests him. So all the other cops are mad at the guy that arrested the rapist. They're not mad at the rapist because he's a brother. He's a fellow officer.
Well, I understand that.
Right? So it's the same thing with teachers.
Code Blue and the teachers cartel. I don't consider them a union.
Right.
The teachers cartel. And I think that I think the union is one of the worst things that can ever be in place right now. I appreciate unions, but they're not doing anything for the kids as far as I'm concerned. But that's another subject for another day. But the superintendent of schools is still a very, very powerful individual. They have resource, they have money, and it's a political position. They know how to navigate. I would say that the superintendent has far more power to move mountains than Jimmy Sanchez.
I would agree with you, Stan, if we had black and brown people in charge of Hartford. But we don't have any black and brown people that have any real authority in Hartford. Think about it. Tell me one black or brown person that has authority in Hartford.
Okay.
Like that.
All right. So
give me one.
I can't.
Right.
So
that's why I keep going back to the idea that we need to support not just Leslie, but any black and brown person who's in office that's working with us, that's accessible. You know what my issue with Beth Narvez was? That she made a public comment about she didn't have to meet with the community. Something about it wasn't in her job description. So these people come in here with this arrogance. You know what I'm saying? Like they don't have to. And for me, there's nothing better than an administrator who's accessible to parents and to community members. You know what I'm saying?
But even with all that accessibility, if they don't have the power to do anything, Leslie's very accessible.
Yeah, and so
Dr. Torres is very accessible. She moves. She's all over the city. She meets with people, and now if her power is muted by the fact that the state, there's powers to be that are over her. I mean that. So at some point we can't have it both ways. I mean either we got folk in position who can do something, and then we expect deliverables.
Yeah.
Or we shouldn't expect any deliverables because the people over there are not going to let them do nothing. I mean, it can't be both ways.
I think that from where I sit at, Stan, folks like Leslie, they get their power from people like you and me. You know what I'm saying? They don't get their power from politicians and others because it wasn't those people that put her in place. And she knows that, and they know that too.
So that brings me full circle back to what I was saying before. That means that's why I thought that she was a great example. She has the power to influence the direction of Hartford Public Schools. And I think the heavy lift demands time to meet the objective. You can't ask for too much too soon because it's impossible to deliver the heavy lift all at once.
Yes.
So I think she needs to be given time. Yes. But at the same time, I don't give anybody, elected, appointed, or self-anointed. If you serve the people, you serve the people.
Absolutely.
And the people have to hold those individuals accountable. You don't get a pass because you got brown skin.
No, absolutely, without question, yes.
Right. And so I think that if we're going to be able to do some of the things that you suggest, I don't know about rewriting all of the laws, but we most certainly can have control of the city we live in.
Well, and I think that's a great point, Stan. I mean, that is an absolutely wonderful point because it goes back full circle to community, right? We hold them accountable. And if we don't like them, what they're doing, because they're either having a negative impact on our community or on our children, then we can remove them. And that's what people need to know, that we have that power. We have that power.
So we have the power. The problem is that the communities are not doing it. So now. Well,
it goes back to this, Stan. A lot of our people are terrified. I remember one time I was at Pedro Segarra's house, the former mayor. Mm-hmm. We used to go to his house and strategize and stuff. So one day we were talking, and I said, well, those people are racist. And he said, Luis, you can use that word, but as mayor, I can't use that word. That would be terrible for me. So these are rules that, like, it's like political correctness is a term that was coined back in the 70s, right? And it was the idea that it was used when people wanted to insult you in public and they wanted you to remain under control. You know, that's what they call, and so what they started doing with it, they started using it to make derogatory statements and stuff like that about black and brown folk when they were present in public to see how they were going to respond to that. You know what I'm saying? So I don't think that a lot of times when there's a truth to be spoken, I don't think political correctness should come into play. And I think that a lot of our politicians and superintendents and people that have jobs like that, I think that they kind of put themselves in those positions. I think that when Martin Luther King said, the time is always right to do the right thing. So political correctness should not come into play, but I think they're bound by that. You know, how they look, how they're going to be perceived by their peers, by the press. I'm not making excuses for anybody. I'm going to support people who I think are doing a good job. You know, I talk about this. I do some public speaking, Stan, and I always say this. It makes me laugh. I hear the sports commentators talk about this white guy's the greatest and this white guy's the greatest. And I always say no white person in America can ever say they're the best or the greatest at anything, period. Because black and brown folk never got a chance to show what we're the best at. So how can you be the best? You may be the best, you know, that with the group that you have, but you're not the best. So we have to support our people and give them a chance. Because what happens is we jump on bandwagons with other people and become naysayers of the same people that we're going to support. I mean, there's very few black and brown politicians in the country. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, what's his name? Jeffries from New Jersey, is he staying? Representative Jeffries. These are people that are speaking truths, you know, at the highest levels of this government. But at the local level, nothing at all. And, you know, cities and in like I said, the 5 major cities, man. So we don't have any, in Hartford, for example, we don't have one capable black or brown man or woman, right, that we can consider for mayor. Okay? I think the police chief should have been somebody like Steve Austin, or even, you know, someone else. There's a couple women that are coming up on the ranks, you know, because these are
they're getting ready to do promotions, you know.
Well, Steve Austin is a brother that he's not, I think he's a sergeant now,
yeah,
but he's a community person. Mm-hmm. And I don't think it should be somebody who's a lieutenant It should be. Steve Austin is the type of guy, Stan, that it can be a huge melee somewhere. And he shows up, and a couple of the people that know him, that are involved, know him, and it's over.
Well, I think that, right now there's a real critical issue as it pertains to promotions, because there's promotions about to be made.
Okay.
And those promotions will be set in stone for the most part for the next 10, 15 years minimum. Because the path to chief will come from these people. Well, so that's a whole thing that's getting ready to happen that people really need to be made aware of, and
we got to make sure that we have input in there, Stan. Otherwise, that department will be lily white again. You know what I'm saying? And they'll keep doing the same stuff that they're doing. There's no accountability, in that department. I get texts, Stan, and phone calls from officers and former officers sharing information with me on a regular basis.
The department is in total chaos. The
mayor keeps defending this fool, man. And the thing that I keep questioning the most is, why are black and brown politicians sticking with the mayor like that? It's because they're beholden to the party, not to the community. And what I would say to you all right now, listen to me, folks. To hell with the party, and let's work with our community. We can be a thriving community if we had your help.
All right. Sounds like a good place to take a break.
Thank you, man.
Stick and Stay. We'll be right back.
Stan, I'm sorry.
Every bad political decision is made by a politician elected to office. So if you think your vote doesn't matter, just remember this. There are people sitting with politicians in a back room making deals about your future, making policies about your children, making decisions about your neighborhood. To them, you are just a vote. You are not their charity. You are not their cause. You are just a vote. Elections have consequences, and if you don't vote, you are actually voting to keep these people in power to work against you. Now, more than ever, you need to make your vote count. Declare your independence from the plantation of party politics and free your political mind.
Hello, my name is Damari Bournes, and I am a member of Hartford Communities That Care Youth Leadership Academy and a member of the Education Work Group. For the past 27 weeks, we have been examining the intersections between education, poverty, violence, and trauma, and to develop the following policy and program recommendations. 1. Address the lack of funding that results in limited academic offerings such as AP classes and college courses taken while in high school. 2. Correct the shortage of extracurricular and sports opportunities and repair and maintain facilities so they send the right message to children about the importance of education. 3. Recruit teachers of color and teach the history of institutional racism. 4. Support bullying, prevention, and trauma support programs. 5. Stop the closing of schools and libraries. Thank you for your time, and I hope you can support our recommendations.
This morning talk with me, your host, J. Sam McCauley. We have the champions of talk here this morning. We got special guest champion Luis Delgado, Ralph the Squirrel, leader of the Squirrel Underground, sitting outside 550 Main Street, keeping an eye on what's happening here in the greatest city. All right, welcome back, folks. We continue with our lively conversation with Mr. Delgado and myself and Alphonso. So where do we go in light of all of this information? It seems to me that we know, you know, some in the community know, but not enough know and are active. So how do you move them to action? How do you move them to, I think that's the $64,000 question. How do you move people to execute what needs to be done instead of reacting to what is done and then, being manipulated? I think it's like people are, ultimately people are being played on so many levels.
Yeah, I think for us, Dan, for me, the thing that has to be clear about anything that we do is that we have to lead that narrative, right? Because other people have led that narrative for us, and it's been disastrous for us. So when I talk about community building, that's what I'm talking about.
But narrative is not a deliverable. We have to start somewhere. I mean, even the language, I spoke about language earlier. The language that we use, Stan, we have been socialized since our birth, since we were in the womb, to speak a language of servitude, a language of slavery, a language of death, right? That's how we've been socialized, because we always speak up to white people and they always talk down to us. You notice the difference? I use two different words, right? We speak and they talk. Well, right. So language is very important for us, and that's why I say narrative, because we have to control what's being said, what's being taught. You know what I'm saying? So we know what's being taught, and the things that are being taught and the things that are being spoke about are always a language of life, a language of healing. You know what I'm saying? A language of freedom, brother. When young black and brown folk use the N-word, the only thing that I can see, Stan, is two old white guys sitting on a porch and two brothers or two sisters walking by, and one of them calls the other one the N-word. So one of the old white guys elbows the other one and says, "See, Bubba, we ain't even got to call them that no more, because they know what they are." You understand? When you call me a Hispanic or Latino, you're offending me. And it's racially motivated, whether you know that or not, because there is no Puerto Rican-ness in Hispanic or Latino. There is no Cuban-ness. You understand? There is none. So what they do, and these are terms, because Spanish people, brother, are people from Spain that are born in Spain, not descendants. And Latinos are Latin, the Latin countries, the French, the Portuguese, the Italians, the Greeks, because they all spoke a common language, the Latin language, right? That's why they're called Latinos. So these are terms that, because we were colonized by these people, they want to call us those names. And it's offensive, but we don't look at it like that. So language is where one of the places, when you call yourself a minority, when I go somewhere and I hear the head of personnel, a black or brown person, and I hear them use the word minority, I know that they're not qualified for that job. Right? Because they're trivializing themselves, they're trivializing me and everything that I represent. Let's go back to names. My name is Luis. And the moment you call me Louis, you are trying to deny me my humanity. Right? And people don't know that. So words are very important, the way that we relate. When I speak to my family, my black and brown people,
I come with words of freedom. I come to build. I don't come to destroy. And we have to know that. So, we have been colonized. Our colonization is so deep. Our young black and brown men, the rappers, they use names like Gotti and some other mafia. Those are people that destroy communities. Why would you want a name like that? We want names to build, to mean something.
Right now, I'm 100% on board with you. But now that you know that, I know that, the audience knows that. How do we get the community to know it to the degree that they can become effective in holding accountable people in positions of chief decisions? I mean, if we the community can remove someone, because now Hartford is not a town to be toyed with. If you piss them off,
right?
If you piss off Hartford, they'll rise up and they'll get rid of you. But that's reactionary,
right?
And they get rid of, which is why we have some of the people in positions that we have now. They don't care who comes after you, just as long as you're gone. And that's very counterproductive in the end, because each time someone gets upset and replaces them with someone else, the bar drops lower and lower and lower and lower and lower. And then we have these discussions about the elected officials that aren't doing anything for us. So, when we, how do you grab a hold of the consciousness of individuals who obviously are necessary if we are going to get a mass to move toward a particular change? That's to me a very heavy lift.
I think the way that I would approach it, Stan, is through education, but not the type of education that we're learning in school. Education in terms of information, because right now, brother, I am under the impression that black and brown people want to corner the market on ignorance, right? I spoke about this on your show before. I have been in the North End and on the South End, and I asked a young black man or a young black woman when they have a shirt of Malcolm or Martin, and I say, "Hey, brother, that's a nice shirt. Who is that?" "Man, I don't know. My mom got me this." But I bet you if I pulled up my phone and I showed him a picture of George Washington without his name, just a picture, he know who that is. So our children have been deprived of their tradition, of their culture, of their history. So to me, programs like this one, when you have people like myself, like you, like Brother McGriff, sharing information, raising awareness and consciousness, we need to have these in our community centers, these conversations. We need to have them in backyards, because think about this, Stan. Could we have this conversation 20 years ago? Would it have been approved? Would it be appropriate? Of course not. We couldn't, because we were afraid to have these conversations in public, because our psyche is such that we need to ask the master's permission before we can pick a particular subject. But now it's wide open. We're talking about it, and we just got to get it out to people. Because for me, the thing that kind of brought my evolution about was I was raised in a church. My grandfather was a pastor. All my uncles, I think I had 7 uncles, and I think 5 of them pastors. A lot of my cousins are pastors. But the thing that kind of started me to question all of that was, in the Bible it says that he had skin of bronze, which is me or Stan McCauley or McGriff, any one of us. And he had hair of wool. Now, to me, that's an afro, right? A small one, a big one, an afro. But there's an image of a white Jesus, blonde, blue-eyed Jesus Christ. And I questioned that. I said, that's not what it says in the Bible. Why would we accept this? So for everybody, it's going to be something different. But for me, that's what started my evolution into understanding what being conscious and being woke is.
I think it's one of you talk about colonization.
Yes.
And a lot of the things you mentioned go back to colonization, including the visual of Jesus in a lot of the churches and things. I just want to read something and then I have another comment. Criticism is easy. Having a desire to understand and express compassion is difficult in this society. Too many of us take the easy way out as we contribute to further damaging the quality of our own people and reality. While most of us are clearly out of our natural minds, we manage to see one another in degrees of insanity. Black people in America are the absolute last people on this planet who can afford to be so unwaveringly negative and critical of one another. We are actually pretty incredible if we can just get to know ourselves. So there's this interesting thing that I hear a lot, where we seem to understand our history and the context of our reality and upbringing, but we also are extremely critical of our people in spite of that understanding. So one of the things I always talk about is, if they had control of our consciousness for 400 years, whose consciousness do you think we're operating with? And if we understand that our people are dealing with a consciousness that's a 400-year process, then we are the last to attack or criticize our people for the actions we partake in. So let's look at the N-word, for instance. My take on the N-word has gotten me banned from a high school and accused of starting a prison riot, or attempting to incite a prison riot. And so my perspective on the N-word is this: when Kunta Kinte was beat until he agreed that his name was Toby, that is the same as the N-word to me. And everything that was forced on us and forced on us to accept as our way of life by those who enslaved us is the N-word to me. So even in our attempt to try to rid something that we see bad, we almost help the colonizer by smashing our own people because of how they use the N-word. And I'm saying, rather than smash our own people for how they use the N-word, help our people understand that the N-word is not just the N-word, but it's the English language that we were beat into speaking. It's the food that we were beat into eating. It's the American way of life that we were beat into accepting. And all of this that we continue to accept today is all the N-word to me. So it's not just about the word, but it's about the consciousness. Our consciousness after 400 years is the N-word. Because we carry all these things that were forced on us through brutality, it's all the N-word. Soul food is the N-word because it's a byproduct of us making scraps that they didn't eat into meals. It's just the N-word. Alphonso, the name that I carry today, Alphonso McGriff III. My ancestors didn't come here with a name like that. That is the N-word. So if I'm going to have challenges with the N-word, then I got to have challenges with my entire reality. Because the American reality is the N-word. to me. That museum they built, that they spent $540 million on in Washington, D.C., one huge manifestation of an expression and reflection of oppression. That whole everything in there that represents our alleged struggle from being enslaved to where we are today, it's the N-word. The things we write through from an emotional state of acknowledging the reality we're in poetry and stories and film, theater. It's the freaking N-word. Because what we even produced and project is a byproduct of the beatings and what was forced on us. And so even our complaints about this reality is the N-word. It's all the N-word. Until we begin to focus on recovering our own consciousness and understanding among one another that we're all not right in the head as a result of 400 years of somebody having total control of our mindset and our consciousness. For me, that's where it starts. It starts with us acknowledging that we are all a little bit whacked out, and we all need to work on this and resist the temptation to smash and criticize each other and then create these delusional degrees of insanity. Well, I know I've been colonized too, but I'm not that colonized. I didn't do that. Those are the things I think is important. And so, Brother Delgado, one of the questions I have for you is, while we are looking into making politics work on our behalf, what can we do in the meantime with what we can control ourselves? What can we do to improve the quality of who we are until we can get to the point where we can get politics to work for us?
First of all, Griff, the way that you presented that, it was poetic, man. It was very beautiful. I want you to know that. For me, brother, I'm going to say it again. It's going to be education, but not the education that you get in school, but the type of education that we're getting on this program right here. Sharing information and making sure that we have a say, Griff, in the content and the context of what our children are learning, because we don't have that. Yeah. I can go to about any family right now in Hartford and ask them what is your child learning in history today or in geography, and most of them won't be able to tell me, because we don't have any idea. We're not in charge. We don't give it no interest because we've given that responsibility to somebody else.
This is the question I have. If that's the case, are we in charge at home?
No. A lot of times, many of us are not. And I'll use myself as an example. You know, my wife is half Russian and half Puerto Rican. And she embraces her Puerto Rican roots because she was born there. She was raised there, right? But we live here now. And a lot of times, when my son is watching TV, I have to remind her. I have to say, baby, make sure there's some black and brown people in that program, because that's the world that we live in. We don't live in an all-white world. So, and in reference to what you were saying also, I look at it the same way, Griff. My people, the people of Puerto Rico, have been colonized up to right now today for 530 years. Some 400 and something by the Spanish, and now America. The way I look at black and brown people, Griff, is that if we didn't go through those 530 years of oppression colonialism, slavery, racism, whatever, then I can say that everything that my people do is ratchet, right? It's inappropriate. But because of that, because they went through that, I could never look at my own people like that. I want to hold white people responsible for all the crimes that they have committed against us and continue to commit, right? But I also want to hold my people accountable for doing better. And it's just little things, man. I mean, in the cities, there's a saying in the country now that I want y'all to start using, and it's when you see a brother, greet a brother. Because we walk by each other and we grill each other, we give each other hard looks, and we can't say hello. What's happening? Hey, brother, have a good day. Whatever, right?
Let me ask you this.
Yes, brother.
Yes, we have a lot of issues that we have to work on, and that is the truth. So my question back to education. We do have a certain amount of power to determine what is going on in the house when our children are in the house.
Yes.
A lot of us are kind of busy and don't, but there's a lot of us who do. So then the question again is, what can we do among ourselves with the power that we have over ourselves, that we can exercise over ourselves? What can we do to improve the quality of who we are and receive the kind of education and understanding about life that we think is important to us? What can we do at home in the meantime, in spite of the educational system, in spite of the politics? That's what I'm asking.
I think that for me, like most of the life education that I have, I got on my own, through research, through studying. I drive for a living, so a lot of times I listen to Audible. I have Kindle. I read a lot. I love to read. So educating yourself, there's a lot of important things that our kids need to know. I want to ask you guys something right now, both of you, Stan and Griff. Did you know that Langston Hughes, the great American poet, right, had an ongoing correspondence with the great Cuban poet Jose Marti? Did you know that? Either one of you?
No, I didn't.
Right, and see, this is the kind of stuff that we need to know. Mm-hmm. Did you know that when Teddy Roosevelt went to Cuba, he went there to colonize it, to make it American, because the Americans thought that Cuba was a white country, but when they went to Cuba and they seen all the black people, they changed their mind, right? So these are the type of things that our children need to know. They don't know that. Our adults don't know that. Did you know that when the Los Cubanos, the Cubans came here from Cuba to Florida, black and white that were like family over there had to separate, and the dark ones went with the African Americans and the white ones went with the whites, because that racism that didn't exist over there, it was awful. It was a smack in the face. You couldn't visit each other, you couldn't talk to each other. So
I got a quick question.
Yes.
You said racism wasn't in Cuba?
Well, not like that. It was, but not like that.
Based on what my own limited understanding in checking that whole thing out, especially the Cubans in particular who went to Miami and left Cuba.
Yes.
When Castro came into power, I was under the impression that a lot of those Cubans were the what do you call in the class system, the upper echelons, the elite, and who looked down on not just the dark Cubans, but the poor Cubans, period.
Yes.
And so when they went to Miami, they were introduced to the understanding that you're participating in a small context of this class system stuff. But when you come to America and you dealing with white folks here, you still the N-word here. You, Cubans.
Yes.
No matter how light you want to present yourself to be. So the so-called racism that was going on in Miami, I think was a harsh reality and introduction to those who came over here thinking that they were these upper echelon people until they met some real white folks who...
Yes, some real racists here. Yes, absolutely, man. But I'm just sharing information, Griff, so we can, to illustrate that there's a lot of wonderful historical facts out here that our children need to know, because, one of the things that I speak about when I speak publicly, gentlemen, is having our own heroes, right? If we allow other people to pick our heroes for us, we'll never have any, right? Victor Herena, the brother who stole $6 million from Wells Fargo, is a hero of mine. To the U.S. government, he is a whatever. I'm not going to use the language that they use because he's a hero to me, right? Albizu Campos is a hero to me. Malcolm X is a hero to me, right? And so we have to learn to pick our own heroes. So all these things have to do with language. So language is very important, that we learn to use language that's appropriate for us, for our growth, for our education. And that's what I would start with is just that education about ourselves. We don't have any pride. We don't have any industry. We don't have any agency, right? And we, for example, me, when I was raised, nobody ever talked to me about starting my own business. The only thing they talked to me about was my family was get a job, go to work. So I always, fell into that mold, of working for somebody. And a lot of us are like that, and that's that slave mentality that we're raised under.
So that's one thing that we can do at home, is to help our young people understand the idea of creating their own businesses, right?
Yes.
In spite of what's going on in
Absolutely,
politics.
yes. Conversations. I have 3 sons now. And all 3 of them are businessmen. They own a business, and I'm so proud of them. I don't know anything about business. I wouldn't know where to start, man, But that's how I was socialized, right? And that's that type of, colonization that I talked about, There's so many things, but for me, education and knowledge of self, right? Because when you educate yourself about your history, your people, your cultures, your tradition, it's extremely empowering. Mm-hmm. And when you go places, you know that you're not by yourself. You have knowledge, you have your ancestors with you, and it's very powerful. But we don't have that. And then the other thing that they have done marvelously in America, if they have pitted every ethnicity against each other. I mean, look, Haitians and Dominicans don't like each other, but they're the same people. They live on the same island. You know what I'm saying? That's all what they learned from the Europeans. The difference between Jamaicans, Haitians, Puerto Ricans, Cubans is who colonized us, because we were all the same. It was a Taino civilization, Taino Arawak civilization, So now we talk bad about each other, but we should be supporting each other. We're all people from the Caribbean. Look at what's happening in Haiti right now. They have a lot of need out there right now, and the Caribbean community in Hartford needs to stand up, okay, and do something. Let's get something done for those families. There's a brother named Walden St. Just. He owns a restaurant called Bros Does, and they're sending food and they're sending supplies, clothes. And if anybody has anything that they want to do, there's a sister named Kamora Harrington who does a lot of work in the community, and she accepts clothes and whatever you have so she can pass on. So we have people in the community that are building community, because for me, look, this is what I used to say to educators, Stan, and this is an important point for politicians too, right? I used to say, if you're making a decision about a student, about how you're going to deal with that student, I don't use the word discipline because to me, white people are punishing and disciplinary, and people of color, we're more healing. And there's more growth, because when I discipline you, you stop growing, but I do too, because I didn't give you any more options than I didn't give myself. So we have to watch the words that we use to, but anyway, it's just important. You know, words are so important in the way that we relate to each other. You know, I don't hear brothers saying nice things to themselves, you know. Hey, man, I hope you had a good day today, bro. You know, just little things that make a difference. And I think another thing that I would really, and it's just as important as education to me, but I'm just me speaking. But, you know, the veneration of our elders, the respect, we don't have that. We don't have that. You know, I see a lot of black and brown folk talk about putting their parents and grandparents in convalescent homes. We don't do that. Black and brown folk, we don't do that. That's not our way. See, we lost our way, and that's what I'm saying. We have to find it again. We have to find our way, but we have to fight for that. You have to really make an effort to really find our way back. When I used to say if you make a decision for a student, right? If it's not good for the student, if it's not good for the student's family, if it's not good for that school, if it's not good for the district, and if it's not good for the community, then you have to start again. All those 5 things have to be in place. And the last one is the most important one, right? Everything revolves around community. So in Hartford, we talk about the North End, we talk about the South End. No, we are one community. So when a politician makes a decision, he has to understand how that decision is going to impact that neighborhood, that community, and then the community at large, which is Hartford. So if we have people in place, whether it's a superintendent, whether it's the mayor, whether it's the police chief, and they're making decisions, and they're not taking those 5 things into consideration, right? And I'm talking about the school, but in the city, it's still 5 things, but they're different, right? Then they're making a mistake, and they have to start again. Because at the end of the day, everything that we do has to be done consciously. How is it going to affect me? How is it going to affect my family? And how is it going to affect the larger community? Well, I don't live by myself.
It's something interesting about what you were saying. I was just thinking that in listening to you, there's a lot of things that require a certain amount of unity among the people. And one of the things that the politicians understand that is there's no need to serve the people. So I don't have to concern myself with serving the people who are not unified. It's no difference than a mandate. Mandates don't work unless, you know, the people are not unified. They'll never work with a unified people. And politicians will continue to simply be politicians who are looking out for their own interests if they're dealing with a people who aren't unified. Now, unified doesn't mean we all vote Democrat, we all vote Republican, we all vote everybody across the row or whatever. Unified is like when the United States was in Iraq and they had a deck of cards. And in this deck of cards, they had all of what they thought were the key people. Once they take out this deck of cards, they're good. So they went there and they took out all of the people in the deck of cards. But the unity among the people was rooted in the consciousness of the people. So other people kept springing up and they didn't understand it because they're so used to going to places and taking out the king or the sultan or the leader and watching everything collapse after that.
Yes.
They didn't understand. In Iraq, these other people keep popping up because unity is not a surface thing. It's not a thing where you can get a bunch of people to come together and say, hey, that makes sense, and then go home. Unity is something that's rooted in the mindset and the consciousness of the people. So the reason why politicians can conduct themselves the way they are today is because politicians understand that the people are not united. The reason why people can force mandates is because they understand that the people aren't united. This is just a basic understanding of the psychology of human beings. And when you are dealing with a group of people who aren't united, there are many things that you can do and get away with that when you look on the outside, how come these people keep voting for these folks and they're not doing anything for them? The reason why, because the people are functioning as individuals who are doing what they think should be done. Well, I'm going to vote for him. The people aren't functioning as a unit. And that's the difference, and that's the problem. And as long as the people aren't united, the politics will remain the same.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is we have people who keep coming along teaching us that we have to hold the politicians accountable, we got to hold the system accountable, we got to go after these people and all of this, when in all actuality, the greatest thing we can do is begin teaching unity among the people and helping people understanding the power in unity. And also helping people understand that you cannot be respected where there is no unity. And not individuals who go and vote for a person or a political party. So the same thing with these mandates. The people who forced mandates on people understood that folks are not united. So I can force mandates on millions of people because I understand that these people are not united. But all it takes is one hospital full of doctors and nurses and everybody who works there to say no, and the mandate can't work.
Right.
All it takes is a community of people who are united consciously. And the politicians can see and respect the power of this unity. That's when politics will actually work. So that's why I ask the question and I say, what is it that we can do, that we can control, that can improve the quality of who we are?
All right. Short break. We'll be right back. Stick and stay.
Hi, my name is Eddie Brown, Program Director at Hartford Communities That Care. I've been in the field of youth development and mentoring for the past 5 years, serving children, youth, young adults, and families. It has been an amazing experience since I have been on board with HCTC to help make a difference in the lives of our youth. Throughout my experiences, I've learned the importance of a good mentor, which is simply being the adult that has time for a child, who cares about that child, and who believes in that child. Here's a few points. Allowing the youth to understand their full potential, respects cultural differences, providing the prolonged relationship which helps the youth as they go through life, listens well, is stable, is a positive role model, nurtures a positive relationship that respects the mentee, reinforces mentee's success, shares decision making with mentee, and last but not least, passion, wanting to make a difference. Practicing and applying these skills have been very vital in all the work I do to help assist and coordinate in the programs and services we offer at HCTC. I thank you for your time, and for all the mentors and role models out there, let's continue to be the change.
My name is Latoya Thompson, and what I got from the HPU program is that I have a voice, and I can go to my kids' school and I can work with the teachers, the principals, and everybody that's there and that's willing to be on the team. And I definitely encourage parents to go out there, join the HPU, and so they can know that they have a voice just as well. And it's other things just as well that HPU brings to the table. Not just only to know that you have a voice, it's other things that you can do. So my experience that I've been working with HPU for years, and it's nice to see that it's more parents involved. And now that parents that come into Burr School, they want to be involved. So that's a good thing. That's a good feeling to know that you can teach other parents about the program. So I take that, and if anything, I would do it all over again because I love what I do.
Morning Talk, welcome back. J. McCauley, along with Alphonso McGriff and Luis Delgado. Morning Talk. Tune in every morning, 8 o'clock. We're here. And share the program if you tune in at other times. You know, a lot of people watch on demand, so we're here anytime you want. And if you got questions, comments, write it down in the comment section. If you're watching us live, if you're not watching us live, it's difficult to answer your questions. And if you are watching us and you do have a comment, you should go to accesstv.org or YouTube. Probably is the best way. We get some of the comments. Like I get comments from Facebook, I get comments from Twitter, comments from LinkedIn, comments from YouTube. But the system is set up to receive comments from 4 different Facebook places, but the program is shared on over 30 different Facebook sites. Every comment that you make remains unique to that particular place, so I can't see all of them. So I only see a few So you may be commenting, but I won't see it in my screen here because you're not commenting where my screen sees. Let's put it that way. A little more techno information than you need to know. But yeah. Okay. All right, let's continue conversation. How do you motivate people to move into doing that which is in their best interest and what needs to be done, and then what is their best interest? I think that we know, once again, what we need to do. And education, you right before the break, you were talking about, education. You mentioned Sister Kamara, who does great things here in the community over with her cultural corner and with her center. I have a lot of respect for Kamara. We have areas in which we disagree, but the areas that we disagree pale into the air compared to the areas that we do agree. And certainly anytime I can be of service or help her, she has but only to call. But having said that, she has lots of conversations. I know we have conversations. I know lots of people across the city who have conversations. But I'm afraid many times that those conversations are in echo chambers. The people who are at the conversations agree with one another. It's like enlightening oneself. It's like reading a book. You go and you find all of the great manuscripts that were not published or that someone has down at Yale locked up in a special room where they won't let anyone in so they can read the knowledge because they don't want you to know what's in that book. So you get enlightened, but now the rest of the world doesn't have the information you have. So what happens when our zeal turns to information sharing, but the information is in a chamber filled with everyone that already agrees with us? So like echo chambers. If there was a way we could break down the walls of the echo chamber so that everyone is actually meeting with one another, I think it would be great if we had a some sort of for lack of a better word or a phrase, a narrative summit or a conversation summit. And in order to have access, you have to be in disagreement with the people in the room. Only for the bold and the brave. You must be in disagreement. Everyone gets 5 minutes. We're gonna be in here all day. This is not we're not talking about nothing. You come in here and leave in an hour. Put your phone in an iron box, encased in lead. Come in, sit down. We're gonna be here all day. This is a deep dive. You spend the first 4 hours just listening to everybody's 5 minutes, and then you go back and forth and have someone moderate so that it stays fair. But to have a better understanding of people where they are by respecting their differences. And then I think you can begin to chip away at some of the things that keep us apart, because when you hear people out, you find out that we don't really disagree on anything. I mean, the things you disagree on are so small, but those that are the divide and conquer folk are skilled tacticians and practitioners of finding out the one thing you don't like and the one thing they don't like. And then they use that to separate you.
They blow it up.
They leave out the 150 things that you do like and the 150 things that they like. And we focus on those things about each other, and therefore there's no commonality. We disintegrate into our own interests, which is the worst thing. Everybody is only about what's in their best interest. Right. And of course, there's only one person that can provide you with the things you need, which is the elected clown. And I think I have a right to call elected officials clowns because I've run for office 3 times. So it's just the clown next door. I'm the clown. I got an opinion. And so it's a matter of, is the clown willing to serve those that he or she represents? Because they don't know everything. And we sometimes do a grave disservice to ourselves. So circling back to where we were in the beginning, by expecting them to have answers. They don't know enough to have answers. All they can do is synthesize what they hear and come up with a solution based on that.
Yes.
They don't know everything. I know one thing: we don't have no one elected. No one elected up there in executive office. There's some in the legislature didn't know anything about virology.
Mm-hmm.
Yet they're sitting up there telling everybody what they need to do.
You need a mask.
You need what we tell you, and if you don't do what we tell you, we're gonna fire you. You won't be allowed to work. So I mean, but they're not experts at that. So they have to get their information from someone. I say all that to say, look, these people need to be getting their information from the community, but the community, if it's not united, it's easy to pick it apart. And how do you begin? What strategies to unite folks? We need to get leaders together. You get community representatives together, or do we, as Alphonso often talk about, if we get it together, if we as individuals do the right thing, that collectively spreads out. If everyone does the right thing, if everyone gets their own head together, then we'll be all of us will be on the same path. One person here says, is there something that the superintendent of Hartford Public Schools can do that is not going to negatively impact her job to increase the partnerships in the community that provide positive and productive outcomes for the students and the families of Hartford?
Absolutely. And you touched upon that, Stan. When you talk about community, one of the things that I have done with Kamora Harrington, which is extremely effective, is that we have meetings in her yard, and we invite the young people from Black Lives Matter 860 and other groups, and I invite what I call elders, right? We have sometimes Rick Torres, sometimes Carmen Cordero will come in, or Lou Santana. We have, what's her name, attorney Cynthia Jennings has come to some of the meetings. And to get an idea of what the young people are thinking and just to give them our feedback. And so what Kamora and I had planned to do before the pandemic took hold of stuff was to go to different neighborhoods and people's houses that we knew and sit in their backyard with their neighbors and just talk. Because that's how you build community. You fix your community from within. You don't fix it by bringing in outsiders that don't know anything about you. They don't know your community's history, the neighborhood history. They don't know the trials and tribulations that different parts of the city have gone through, the schools. So we build from within, and I'm going to keep saying we can build from within. We have a lot of phenomenal leaders. We've had incredible leadership in the past, and I'm looking forward to seeing some of that, some of those leaders evolve and rise to the top. We're in a different age. The old-style politicians, where they had to kowtow to the white politicians and to the Democratic and the Republican parties, we don't have to do that anymore, because we have the power to vote, and we understand that. But education and information, sometimes every couple of years, white people pick a word that they want to make famous. And the latest word that they're trying to make famous is equity, which is something they know little to nothing about. Because look at the state of this country. Look at how we are. Where's the equity in that? So, once again, we have to use language that's building, that's educating, for our community. It starts with language, the language that we use when we greet each other, when we go to meetings, how we ask for things. It's important that we learn to speak a language that shows us as black and brown people that we love each other, that we support each other, that we want to see each other doing well. And Griff talked about unity. Unity doesn't mean that we have to be together. It's just letting the politicians know that if you do something wrong, this community is united, and we will remove you. Whatever, the police chief, the mayor, the city council person, whoever. If you're doing something that is contrary to the development and involvement of our community, then you got to go. And it doesn't matter what color you are or what ethnicity. If you're wrong, you're wrong. You know, but in a city that's 90% plus people of color, we have to look for ourselves, for our leadership, because it's about our families. It's about us. So yes, Dan, I believe that there's a lot of work to be done, but it's up to, you know, soldiers or warriors like us to continue that tradition, that oral history, because the reason that I talk about the community meetings in the backs of people's houses is because we are a community, right? We black and brown folk, we like community stuff, and that's who we are. You know, we build from within, you know, and we have to create things, other things. I mean, basketball and football are good sports for our kids, but there's a lot of other things that they need to do. I mean, I'm a huge chess exponent. I believe that chess should be taught in schools as early as kindergarten, you know, because it promotes thinking, you know, it promotes critical thinking. It teaches you that, you know, there's consequences for your actions. Sometimes you have to make a sacrifice, all the things that you go through in life. So these are things that are important. I believe that our kids need to learn how to change a tire in school. They need to learn how to balance an account. They should know how to use basic tools. You know what I'm saying? These are things that are going to help them when they're out here in the real world. Some of the stuff, I remember in the 80s, they had a lot of programs, a lot of government programs, like changing the panels on a satellite. And it was a job that you would never get, but you went through all the training, and then at the end, there was no job for you. Mm-hmm. But the people, right, that were being funded to run the program, they made the money. So we have to watch out for all these things, all these tricks, you know, and sometimes it's our own people that, and I know Griff spoke about earlier about not attacking our people or belittling our people, but we have to hold them accountable, you know, and it's better when we do it. I think, like, for example, there was a brother named Michael Sharp who was involved. He had a school. He did some crimes. I thought we should have got together and broke him down, you know, and did you know, before the white people got him, did our justice with him. Let him know why he did all the things that he did, because we need that. You know, our community, we need to have an elders council where we can bring in a businessman or somebody who's not acting right and say, hey, clean that up. You know what I'm saying? You're hurting people. Because this is where we live. We have a right to all of this. You know, let's talk about the marijuana, cannabis now, right? Something that's been in our families for years and we've been criminalized. Now they're trying to keep us out of it. I think it should be made like liquor, that if you have a license, you can set a lot out of your store so people can make money. You know what I'm saying? And create industry for ourselves. So yeah, education in everything that we do, we need to educate ourselves, but the language, the narrative, we have to be in charge of what is taught, who's teaching our children. I met with Beth Narvez. Before the meeting started, I said to her, please, don't tell me that there are no black and brown educators that you're looking. We went into the meeting 5 minutes, and she said, Mr. Delgado, we've been looking, there are no black and brown, but I don't see Hartford, I don't see New Britain. I don't see any of these cities that have a real ongoing campaign to hire and keep black and brown educators and administrators. I don't see that. I hear a lot of words. I hear a lot of we're doing the best that we can, but I don't see any action. Right? So we have to hold these people accountable. You know what I'm saying? I went to the first meeting that I had with the superintendent in New Britain, the first one. It was all staff, and everyone, including the superintendent, talked about community in that meeting. And at the end of the meeting, she wanted to, you know, pump her chest. And she said, Mr. Delgado, what do you think about our community meeting? And I said, I got to be honest with you, superintendent. These type of meetings terrify me, because everyone in this meeting talked about community, but there isn't one person from the community in this meeting. And she was upset, because I spoke the truth. And it's the same thing. You know what I'm saying? She told the staff member that she was upset with me because I called her racist, or I said she was racist. And my response to that was, stop doing and saying racist things, and then I'll stop calling you that. We have to hold people accountable, and we have to make them uncomfortable because they're too smug and too snug in their racism and their oppression and their discrimination. So I'm going to stay to my narrative. The way for us to pull ourselves out of this mess is to create our own industry and our own agency, is to educate ourselves and to control the narrative, the content, and the context of what's being taught. Community meetings are great because that's how you build your base, you know.
Before we end, can I ask you to help me understand what you mean when you use the term racist? What is that to you?
Racism, first of all, is just systematic. I think that most people think that racism is what a white person may say to you, or a cop, the way he treats you, and that is racism, right? But that's at a very low level, right? Racism is what's in the laws, what's in the system, and these are laws and these are policies and procedures that are created in such a way that they work well for one group, but they don't work well for other groups. And it's in the laws, it's in the language, it's in the books, it's in the water, it's in the attitudes, right? It's in the behavior. So racism is a way that people, and going back to the N-word, you know, racism is a system where when white people use the N-word against us, they're reminding us that they don't think we're human beings. So racism is a lot of things. You know, we have all kinds. It's all the same thing, but it manifests itself in different ways. You know, we have homing racism. We have financial racism, you know, when we can't get a loan at the same rates as other people. Discrimination, you know. So it's a lot of different things, Griff. It's a lot of things, but it's just a systematic, or it's a system of laws and procedures that work well for one group and not for another, and it's being used to, you know, to discriminate, to keep people down. There's all kinds of things, man, in the books that help us understand that. But that's my interpretation of it, Griff.
I can dig it. I was just curious.
And what is your definition of racism, if you don't mind me asking you?
Well, the way racism has been presented to me in growing up is basically white people treating black people and others that they see beneath them in a manner that's other than respectful and human and humane. So, and whatever tools that they can use to
manifest it,
to make manifest this concept of superiority that they have, can be identified as racism. Now, I am one who does not believe in racism. I believe that with some people, or those people who are identified as racist, their behavior is their nature. And the problem with identifying it as racism is we get duped into having meetings in an attempt to so-called fix racism. And so to me, it's like having a meeting to fix birdism because birds keep using their wings to fly. Nobody could ever get me in a meeting to fix birdism because birds keep using their wings to fly. So nobody could ever get me in a meeting to fix racism because those people who function in the energy of so-called racists are operating based on the nature of their behavior, and there's no meeting that can change the nature of anything or anybody. And so it takes us so far to the left, and we spend so much energy on this concept of racism and trying to fix it and trying to defeat it and trying to overcome it and trying to fight it, that it takes us away from reconnecting with our own selves, our own spirit, our own energy, and who we are. So for that reason, I don't believe in the idea of racism. I believe that for so-called racists, their behavior is their nature, and we should accept that, understand it, come up with a plan on how to deal with it, execute the plan, and get on with life.
That's beautiful, Griff. That's beautiful, man. Obviously, you have evolved in your own personal awareness and conscious and development a lot more than most people. So that's beautiful. I congratulate you on that.
All right. Well, unfortunately, we're out of time, so we gotta go. Luis Delgado, Alphonso McGriff III, Jay Stan. We'll see you here next time as we continue conversations. We'll have to have Luis back, and we'll do some more conversations. We'll see you all next time. Y'all have a great, fabulous day. Bye.